Welcome to this free webinar, which I called From the Ego to the Soul, a life-transforming transition. My name is Georgiana Danetz. I'm a yoga and tantra teacher. I teach this in Sweden, and for 28 years ago, I have started the Shakti groups and the Tantra for Women courses in our schools, and have been doing that since then. It's one of my absolute favorite topics to be talking about. But this evening, I chose to speak about how we can do this inner work and the shift from the ego to the soul, because especially nowadays, it's really, really necessary. And it's also something that we will have to do no matter if we know about what is going on in the society at the planetary level or not. So as I mentioned, the title of this free webinar is the Life Transforming Shift from the Ego to the Soul. And we can start with a question: who hasn't gazed up to the starry sky, contemplating it and meditating upon his or her own existence and meaning in this multiverse? So what is reality exactly? Is it only what we can perceive through the five senses? Is it only what we learn in schools? Or is it more than that? And actually striving to find an answer to this question, what is reality exactly, is very, very important, because when we believe that the reality is only what we can perceive through the five senses and what we learn in school about it, it actually diminishes our ability to experience reality in its whole. So reality is much more complex than we can experience it through the physical senses, and is much more than we learn in school, in the normal school. In our spiritual school, actually is the right platform to find out what reality is exactly. Because when I'm mentioning the word reality, I'm not only speaking about the external reality that is outside of our physical body. I'm also referring to the internal reality, which is as important to discover as the outer one. So when we start understanding what reality is, it will help us a lot to discover who we really are, to be able to fulfill the meaning with our life, with our existence, and also to be able to live freely, to somehow get rid of the tyranny of our lower self, our lower structures, as for example, the ego. So another question that we might ask is, what is the ego? The ego is a tool that we use for structuring our sense of identity. It is, we can say that the ego is the consciousness of I. We can also say that the ego is the engine of thinking, making us believe in a wrong way that we are unique and separated from all the rest. As we evolve on the spiritual path, some say we need to transcend the ego, others say that we need to tame it, and some say that we should love the ego. So what is our ego actually, and what should we do with it so that we can make the best of what we are given? We need to understand from the beginning that the ego's purpose is to keep us into the experience of duality. For example, good, bad, masculine, feminine, up, down, and so on. The ego has been termed the lower self compared to aspects of our soul and of our immortal self, all at once. Because as multi-dimensional selves, when we came into this body, we knew that we would forget who we really are. And with very few exceptions, people, when they incarnate on this planet, they don't remember who they are. There are not so many who actually, since an early age, they remember who they really are. And this is the ego. This is ego tricking us to believe in this illusion we live into, that this is the only reality, when in reality it's not true. So the ego is not who we really are. It is our false image of self. And it's not even the image that others may see when they think of us, when they are in connection with us. So the ego is like a mask of approval. It wants to be in control, and it is driven only by fear. And this is also a key aspect, because when you understand that our ego is driven by fear, then by loving, instead of being afraid, you start loving more and more, the ego will start diminishing and eventually disappear. And also, it is the ego who is partially responsible for not allowing you to love yourself 100%, because it hides who you really are. And when it comes to spiritual evolution, all spiritual authentic traditions, they all speak about the same aspect, that one of the highest goals with our spiritual evolution is actually to discover who we really are, so that the ego will leave us, so that the ego will die. And identifying why we have this lower self and the aspects of it is essential in the awakening process of ascension. So when we remove this veil, we'll shed more light upon areas of ourself that need healing. And in order to get to the core of ourself, the immortal, divine self, we have to begin peeling the layers of the mask to reveal what lies beneath it, almost analogically and also a little bit comically speaking, like you start peeling an onion so that you get to the core of it. We need, from a certain point of view, to do the same, because the ego placed a lot of layers on top of our soul and self, so that we identify in a wrong way with anything else but the supreme self. And there will come a trigger point in our life when we will begin to awaken to the fact that we are multi-dimensional souls having a physical human experience. And when we realize that there is a higher aspect of us that we are tethered to, of course the ego begins to fear that it will lose its identity. So this is the only reason why the ego is tricking us, because the ego doesn't want us to discover who we really are. Because when we discover who we really are, when we understand that we are a divine spirit, borrowing temporarily a physical body so that we can temporarily have a physical experience, the ego will lose completely its control upon us. So all the suffering, the fears, and all kind of strange ideas that the ego is placing into our mental structure will not enter our inner system anymore. So part of the ascension up the spiritual ladder is to transcend the ego and expand our consciousness to focus on a higher aspect of ourselves. Eventually, as we strengthen these connections with our higher selves, with our immortal self, Atman, as it is called in the yoga tradition, and our soul, we will not need the ego's identity or the third dimensional experience anymore. And this is also a crucial aspect to keep in mind, because I will explain a little bit in more detail as we go through this evening's webinar. We will have to make also the shift, not only from the ego to the soul, but from the third dimensional experience to a higher one. So our inner transformation becomes easily possible by gradually elevating our frequency of occult resonance. And just let's create together a scenario so that we understand a little bit better what it means to gradually elevate the frequency of our resonance. So let's do our best for a moment to become aware of everything that is interesting us, that is giving us pleasure, or that is upsetting us. So just become aware of everything that is interesting you, that is either giving you pleasure or is upsetting you. So the duality of this physical experience. And then let's think about all the creative revelations we have, all the new realities which open in front of us, and all the curiosities which actually exist in this world if we pay a little bit more attention to it. So now let's add all the opinions, complaints, hypocrisies, tragedies, dramas, and fears. Are you keeping up with the pace? So do you have a little bit the image of all these inside of your consciousness? So now we can feel this richness of information within us because they manifest strongly. We can even say that they are exerting a pressure upon the fine membrane that delimitates our individual existence. When it is so much richness of information within us, sometimes I'm sure that you can experience this pressure inside, that how much more can you take? So how much space is inside of this so-called membrane which delimitates our existence? How much pressure can we take before our subjective reality explodes? No doubt there has to be another modality of getting to know the one who is unlimited. And this is also one of the most important aspects on a spiritual path, getting to know the one who is unlimited. You might call it God, you might call it the supreme truth, the ultimate reality. It doesn't matter which name you use because the reality behind the words is exactly the same. So luckily, we are in the middle of a process of evolution which will lead us exactly towards this new type of perception, towards this new identity, and towards this new reality completely free of any constrictions. And because we live in a period of time which we all know we live into, can you imagine for a few seconds how this new reality in which you have acquired a new superior identity is when it is completely free of any constrictions, any restrictions? I hope that you do, because we are going towards that destination. So to better understand this new reality, which is on the verge to be born, even if it's maybe sometimes difficult to believe something like that, especially nowadays, this new reality having a superior frequency and a source which is unlimited, it is good to know from the beginning that there is a perfect justified motive for which we might feel scattered or ultra sensitive or very agitated in this period of time. And it is not only because of the news we are bombarded with on a daily basis, spreading panic and fear. There is another reason, and we will go through it together. So this new reality is actually the establishing of, we can call it the intuition era or the golden era. And it will be the consequence of a gradual but rapid process of transformation at the individual level as well as the society level. we will have to go through it no matter what. We are actually in the middle of this process. We are going through it. So even if, to begin with, we will feel confused from an energetic and emotional point of view, sooner or later, this transformative process will lead us towards a sublime destination. And luckily, there is a map that can guide us directly towards this destination or can facilitate it for us. Why do I say it leads us directly or can facilitate it? It is very simple. We are in the middle of a transformation process. If we accept it, if we do our, let's call it job with it, if we do our part, this map that I will present for you will guide us directly to this wonderful destination. If we resist it, the transformation process, if we don't do what it is necessary for us in order to speed up the transformation process, the map is there, but it will only facilitate your journey. It will not take you directly to the destination, because when you resist it, you chose by resisting to experience also a little bit of suffering, troubles, the existential melodrama. So understanding the process of transformation in its whole is absolutely crucial, because otherwise we will just approach superficially all kinds of ideas, energetic techniques, without understanding the key components that can ease our path. And when we understand the process of transformation in its whole, in this way it will accelerate our transition from the ego to the soul, from the third dimensional experience to a higher one, and it will also make it easier. And I don't know about you, but I know about me. I want it to be easier. I don't want to go through a melodrama. So in order to transcend the ego, it is important to first recognize that it was a very necessary component of our spiritual awakening process. In a humoristic manner, we can say that the ego, without the ego, we would have no identity, no personality. We would just be like, I don't know, hashmash of nothing concrete. So the ego it was a necessary component of our spiritual awakening process, but we don't need it anymore. So we need to understand a key element about the ego. The ego actually is a sense. Exactly like we have the other senses, the sense of smell, of touch, or taste, and so on. So the ego is actually a sense, and it has also an organ. So if you understand this practical aspect, that you also understand very well. In order to enhance a sense, you need to train it, to use it a lot. What happens if you don't use it anymore? It will atrophy. It will diminish very much. So the less we use the sense of ego, which is actually placing us in resonance with the energies of ego from the macrocosm, the smaller it becomes. And believe me, we don't need the ego anymore. Having an identity other than what we really are sparked a deep withdrawal into needing something more in order to fulfill ourselves. So that was the role of ego, but we don't need it anymore. We can let it go. So this needing to fulfill ourselves with many things over and over until we realized, or we will realize, that there was nothing that would fulfill us but love for ourself, for our supreme self, and love for God. And there have been several years already since we hear all kinds of expressions like the transformation of paradigm, the quantum leap, or the zero focus, or the new era, or the holographic reality. both in the worlds of physics, business, spirituality, even in politics. So what does that exactly mean? The transformation of paradigm implies a transformation of our way of thinking and perceiving life, reality, aspects which lead to the transformation of our behavior. And here I will just make a very short parenthesis. Have you noticed the past year how the changing, because changing means something which is to the worse and transformation means something which is to the best, to the better. So have you noticed how the changing of thinking, all this fear going on, have transformed the behavior of people? I have, and it's a sad story to see how people in just 1 year changed their behavior in a manner which is not good. It is not beneficial for us and for our soul at all. So the transformation of paradigm implies actually a transformation of our way of thinking and perceiving to the better, to a superior level, and these aspects would lead to the transformation of our behavior also to the much better. So what is happening nowadays actually surpasses all known limits. We are living in an era of transformation and also of change. So what does the difference consist of? Well, the difference consists of a shift of consciousness, an awakening, an ascension process which takes place right now at a planetary scale. We are in the middle of it. And this is unprecedented because during the eons of time, while the humanity was on this planet, there have been these processes of transformation in which individuals, people started awakening to the true reality, discovering who they really are, discovering the Supreme Self. Now, this shift of consciousness is happening at the planetary scale, and this is unprecedented. So now we are more or less pushed to wake up, to understand who we really are. We are divine beings having a physical experience. We are divine spirits and souls in a physical body, having a physical experience, but we are much more than what we can perceive with the 5 physical senses. So this shift of consciousness that we are in the middle of it right now, it's unprecedented. So the transformation, the metamorphosis, or the transmutation are completely different things. This phenomenon, this shift of consciousness, implies a modification, an alchemical modification of the base structure of things. And this is what it is, unprecedented. It implies the shift from an energetic stage to a superior one, a stage which is much, much better. And this modification takes place in an almost, we can call it, miraculous manner. For example, the legend of the phoenix bird illustrates perfectly this phenomenon, because through the burning into a purifying fire, capable of transmutation, which is equivalent with the spiritual growth, and it's so-called rebirth from ashes in the form of the golden creature, meaning light and love. So from a metaphorical point of view, from an analogical point of view, we are now like the phoenix bird. And if we allow the old structures, the aspects which are not anymore serving us, including the ego, if we let them burn into the purifying fire, we will be reborn in the form of the golden creature, in the form of light and love, because our true nature is actually light and love. When our identity modifies, the external reality modifies itself in its turn. And the other way around is also valid. When the external reality modifies, our our identity modifies itself in its turn. And again, I want to draw your attention upon the fact that this is happening right now. Because the external reality modified quite dramatically for the past year, also our identity modified in its turn to a certain degree if you believed the story that they sell. So if we want to modify to the better the external reality, we need to modify our identity. And actually we need to discover our true identity, to put it bluntly like this. When we will do that on a planetary scale, on a mass scale, the external reality will have to transform. It will not stand a chance. It will not be able to continue like this. So the external reality we experience right now, we are actually fueling it with our fear. We can transform it to the better if instead of fear, we start experiencing dignity, love, integrity, verticality, and other divine attributes that we can accumulate and amplify in our being. So if we are thinking of our world, then we know that our world includes time, space, and matter, finite objects, we believe them to be, empty spaces, an inner world, an outer world, a past, a present, a future, as well as a self-consciousness based on images which are reflected back towards us by other beings. So, does this reality sound familiar to you? Because this three-dimensional world, this cubical world, is the one in which we live right now, all of us, which we define as being normal, and we identify ourselves with. This is the level at which we are at this moment, somehow discontent, somehow still full of enthusiasm, waiting for the next moment in the evolutionary leap. In what way could the sense of our identity and the world in which we live transform now? Most probably this new world will have nothing to do with the super performant computers that have high working speed, or with the obsessive mobile phones or other type of technology, or with the travels through space in three-dimensional cosmic ships, which are not exactly very elegant or easy to maneuver. The transformation of our world will become real only when the next superior dimension, the fourth dimension, will integrate completely the third one, the so-called cubical one, which we consider to be normal. And we maybe right now don't have the necessary openness of our consciousness and also a little bit of intuition, spiritual intuition, to understand what will mean for us to live in this fourth dimension of existence, which is on a higher level. But if you make just a short imagination exercise, at one point in our evolution, we were just one point, living in one dimension, no movement, no ability to perceive anything else. And now we live in the third dimension in which the possibilities seem to be infinite. We can imagine this fourth dimension as a world of the soul, as a world of the spirit, as an experience and less as a place in itself. I've heard all kinds of theories that the fourth dimension will mean that we move all of us into the astral, subtle world and so on. The fourth dimension starts within, in our heart, in our soul, in our spirit, as an experience, so less as a place in itself. We will probably not enter a spaceship and move to another planet. In this fourth dimension, all objects exist simultaneously in a unified field of energy and consciousness. And this is also a key element, a very important aspect to keep in mind, because when we understand that we are living in a holographic reality, that we are living in a unified field of consciousness, that we are united, we are one, all of us, then we will have to do this inner transition from the ego to the soul, because we will not be able anymore to live like we live right now. In the fourth dimension, the whole contains everything else. The whole is known by everyone, and the main, we can call it substance, from which this fourth dimensional reality is made of, is actually love. And when we have love in our hearts, when we live our life based on love, I am sure that you can already draw the conclusion that there will be no more fears, no more conflicts, no more inner conflicts or outer conflicts, no more suffering, because love, when you live on the level of love, those will disappear. They will not have a place any longer. And this fourth dimension has been prophesied for many, many centuries. It is the Inca prophecy, which speaks about the new golden era. So we enter actually in an era which the holy prophets from the Andes called the era of meeting again ourselves. It sounds very beautiful, and it is a very beautiful experience to meet again yourself, your divine, immortal self. The people from the Andes believe that in this period we will go through a transition from the third to the fourth level of consciousness. And I just mentioned a little bit what it consists of. The main substance it consists of is love, and living your life in the soul, from the soul, with the soul. No more ego. The great provocation consists in freeing ourselves from our collective fears. And this is quite a provocation, especially in this period of time. But also accumulating enough spiritual energy so that the humankind can collectively go towards the fourth level of consciousness. Maybe you can, a question popped up in your mind. How can you accumulate enough spiritual energy? By practicing a spiritual path. For example, the yoga system is offering you a very rich methodology. It's a very rich system with a lot of techniques, methods, practical exercises, which implies the training of our physical body, but also the training of our psychic structure, mental structure, and emotional structure. So all our subtle bodies are involved in this spiritual practice. So the more we practice yoga, for example, the more spiritual energy we will accumulate. And it is necessary to accumulate enough spiritual energy because it's the fuel which makes possible the transition towards the fourth level of consciousness, in which we will all be living in and from our souls. We also need to come back to the natural ways of living, to be able to enjoy the happiness of our souls, to acknowledge the cosmic laws, to understand them, acknowledge them, respect them, and practice them, and to make a temple out of our body in accordance with its meaning. Our body can do much more than we believe it is possible right now. I will just give you an example. I used to use this example quite a lot. For not so many years ago, there were some scientists and physicians, doctors, who won the Nobel Prize for Medicine when they discovered the telomeres, or the so-called enzymes of immortality. The fascinating aspect for me was that they confirmed scientifically something which I knew in theory, but now they came also with a scientific proof. And namely, they said like this, that our body, exactly as it is right now, it is designed, allow me to put it like that, it is designed to live up to 1,000 years, 900, 1,000 years. So, of course, the question that popped up in my consciousness was, why don't we live up to 1,000 years? One aspect for sure is because we don't believe it is possible, but also other aspects which are pretty much involved in this dramatic diminishing of our lifespan is the fact that we don't live a natural life. We are not so much in tune with nature. We polluted the planet quite a lot, and we pollute also our body quite a lot through some things that we eat, some things that we watch on TV, and more. So when we go back to our natural ways and we make a temple out of our body, I am absolutely convinced to 1,000% that we can live to 1,000 years. Each human being represents a sacred temple, and the altar is the heart. And on this altar, it burns the fire of love, a reflection of divine light. So just take a second, a couple of seconds to feel deeply in your heart that you are a sacred temple, and the altar of this temple is your spiritual heart. And on it, it burns the fire of love, which is a reflection of divine light. If you would have this attitude, this transfiguring attitude towards yourself on a daily basis or on a minute basis, minute by minute, I'm sure that you can understand that you will also be you will be healthier and happier than you are right now. And when it is about this with healthier and happier, I also know that if we don't have any deadly disease at the moment, we think that this is what means to be healthy. What we experience right now, it is healthy. It means healthy. But because we never experience 100% of health, of true divine health, we don't know it. There is place for improvement, I am sure of it. So getting to the point where our consciousness is expanded and our soul is fully awake is not an easy place to get to. It's not impossible. It just takes a bit of time and, of course, a dedicated exercise, a dedicated practice, a dedicated effort and self-discipline. So if anyone is looking for a quick fix or a magic pill to get you to this state, you're on the wrong planet. We are not here for a quick fix or a magic pill. We are here to evolve by making a conscious effort, by choosing consciously. To awaken our soul takes a bit of persistence, some patience, and also faith. It won't happen overnight, but we can make it happen. The result, when you awaken your soul, a beautiful soul, an energy that can appreciate, love, and manifest anything into being. That will be the result of an awakened soul. Those who aren't open to at least a slight amount of awakening will miss out the amazing hidden beauty the world has to offer, exactly as it is right now. but we can make it much better. Knowing that we are here for and actively pursuing it is something an awakened soul will do with determination and an open mind. So, fulfilling the meaning with our existence, an awakened soul will do with determination and an open mind. When we understand we are here for a reason, we'll make sure we are aligned with our life purpose at all times. So you can even do it practically. This is not just an intellectual information presented on a Saturday evening. So being aligned with your life purpose implies that you first discover which is the meaning of your life, which task you chose before you incarnated, and then on a daily basis you make sure that your actions, your thoughts, your aspirations will align with that life purpose. And from my own experience, I tell you, this is one of the most fulfilling states you can experience, and we can do it on a daily basis. We will start experiencing true love, because there is actually no other type of love than true love. What we called love on this planet at this moment is just a caricature. And sometimes, many times, it's just a mixture of some love and a lot of ego. The awakened soul loves all beings and creatures and does not judge. Unconditional love is the purest form of love. There is an acceptance, a respect only the awakened souls will understand. There is no judging, no hate here. We will feel that nothing is impossible, and in the same time we understand very well that not everything is permitted. When the soul is awake, you are open to receiving anything that will truly serve you and won't take manifestation lightly, because the power of manifesting can be abused. We see it in the outer world quite a lot. And awakened souls are completely aware of this power of manifestation. So an awakened soul will be very careful with what they think, what they aspire towards, what intentions they have, what kind of emotional states they maintain on a daily basis. So the awakened souls will manifest only what they truly need, not for greed or materialistic tendencies, but to nourish their souls and help them live out the purpose of their life. We will also, when we start awakening our souls, we will feel deeply that we are all one. We are like cells in an organism. Each and every one of us are part of the bigger and beautiful collective that is the entire universe. So when I say we are all one, I'm not referring only to the beings living on this planet. The universe is a little bit bigger than that. And we are all one at the level of the entire creation, not only at the level of this blue planet. We understand that we all have everything we already need inside of us to live beautiful lives filled with love and light. We are also aware, when we start awakening the soul, that transformation is necessary. Awakened souls are fully aware of what no longer serves them, what needs to take place in order to transform into the light being that they long to be. So being a light being doesn't imply that your physical body will transform into a subtle light or even a physical light. It means that inside of you, you are completely aware and conscious of the fact that you are a manifested divine light. To be an awakened soul is like nothing maybe you've experienced ever before. People with an awakened soul have an aura around them that is warm and beautiful. You'll recognize them instantly and want to be around them more. They are natural healers. They radiate love and light. Becoming one will be the most liberating act you can ever do for yourself. And I know that it might sound paradoxical. So you will become one with everything else, and this is liberating. It will mean that you lose your identity. No, it doesn't mean that. It will mean that you discover your true identity instead of the ego identity, which triggered this false conviction that you are individual and that you are separated from the rest. So there will be no hate, no judgment, only love. As the cosmic energies of our planet increasingly infused with the contrasting expression of light and dark, and we see it intensely nowadays, these contrasting expressions of light and dark frequencies during this time of transition, many of us, whether we are conscious of it or not, of this elevation in the contrasting vibrations, we are experiencing breakdowns, but also breakthroughs at an accelerated pace. This is very good news, especially when you know about it and you know what to do, because otherwise there will be a little bit more breakdowns than breakthroughs for the moment. So actually, as I said in the beginning, we are being pushed to awaken, to align with the divine force, to align with the purpose of life in its whole. And this process is bringing up anything that is not of the same frequency that our spirit is currently downloading in order to be transmuted. So you will notice many of these aspects in the daily life on a personal level and on the collective level. Everything that doesn't have the same frequency as our spirit stands no chance of survival. Many things are transpiring and shifting on multidimensional levels which lie outside of our conscious awareness, at least for the moment. And the strong currents of these galactic waves are pressuring us to ride the flow of transformation. You can even call what is happening on a planetary scale right now as a popcorn event. So all the beings on the planet will have this awakening to the soul, to their true identity, and it looks like a popcorn popping when people start awakening their soul. So this is something that is on a galactic scale, and these waves are actually pressuring us to ride the flow of transformation. No matter if we know about it or not, no matter if we believe in it or not, no matter if we want it or not, we will still have to ride it. And we also, it's necessary to mention that the awakening is a process that is different for each and every one of us as we reach towards higher, broader levels of consciousness. So my awakening, it will not be the same as your awakening, and it will not resemble anything like somebody else's soul awakening. It is different for each and every one of us because we have a certain luggage, so to say, with us. We have a certain personal history. This is not our first life. So everything that we have accumulated, both the beneficial aspects and also the aspects which are not so good for us, we will have to assess them, to go through them, to let go of everything which is old, rigid, not serving us anymore, so that we can awaken. And therefore, the awakening process looks differently for each and every one of us. Some people tend to overestimate themselves with regards to their level of being or to their level of awareness. They claim to know themselves when they actually mistake the self for their personality, for the ego, with its more subtle programming and conditioning features. So this is also an aspect we need to pay attention to, so that when we believe that we know ourselves, we refer to the supreme immortal self and not to the ego. It's important to understand the fundamentals of true deep self-work, especially since much of that has been either corrupted and also oversimplified via the New Age and the so-called pop spirituality and pop psychology mechanisms. So true deep self-work means really getting to the grounds of who we really are. And it implies also this burning into the purifying fire of everything which doesn't serve us, everything which is keeping us in the illusion of separation, suffering, drama, and so on. And this requires courage, because when you are confronted with your inner dark aspects, it requires courage, it requires huge determination and a very harmonious willed power. It requires also a lot of humbleness, self-acceptance, love, tolerance, and more, many more divine attributes that we can assimilate and accumulate. So this picture that is presented by the so-called New Age trends and the so-called pop spirituality, that we are chanting, holding hands, and everything will be fine, they will have a surprise. So what does it actually mean to be truly and fully awake? Well, we are entering slippery territories here, a place where we meet the limitations of our words and our language. It's something that the mind cannot comprehend via thought process or language decoding, for it is an internal experience beyond thought, emotions, and feelings. It's a higher state of being, simply. So this state of fully accessed beingness is obviously not what most of us experience in our striving for awakening, let alone on a consistent basis. However, what I've noticed in myself and in others is that more and more people experience glimpses of this state of awakening here and there, or slowly approach it with the growing sense of being in this world, but not of it. So don't forget that in reality you are beyond this manifestation. You are neither the body nor the soul. You are in the same time the whole world, and you are also beyond it. Nobody can explain to you in a satisfactory manner this mystery, which you will be able to savor only when you will experience it firsthand, inwards, within. Finally, inner works, love and knowledge go together, and self-perfection will become possible. What we call the transformation of our inner nature. These results certainly do not all come at once. They come more or less slowly, more or less completely according to the condition and growth of the being. The more effort and determination we put into our spiritual practice, the sooner they will come. It's only by a shift of consciousness that the true basis of life can be discovered from within outward. It's not the other way around. And this does not mean some millimeters behind the surface. We need to go deep and find the soul, find the true self behind the masks of the conditioned personality, the divine reality within us. So, to be awake, it is also the state wherein we are not subjected to any attacks or interferences of the occult hyperdimensional forces, since we find ourselves resonating on a higher frequency. So, if what happens right now in the world bothers you, affects you in not in a beneficial manner, what we can do is to awaken ourselves, because then these attacks and interferences of some occult dark forces, they will have no power over us anymore. This is the solution. Living in our super consciousness, in our supramental level, in our supramental body, and awakening the soul. The moment, the second we do that, they will lose their grip on us. Contrary to popular beliefs, this awakened state is not a constant feeling of bliss or ecstasy, but there will be peak experiences like that. Nor is it a feeling of love or happiness. It really transcends anything we usually experience in an ordinary state of consciousness that are related to emotions and feelings. And it is also very difficult to describe them in words because they transcend the human language. Ultimately, it actually transcends the duality of pain and pleasure, happiness and suffering. There is a deeper, silent contentment, a grounded calmness, a sense of peace, not depending on any external circumstances, a sense of slowing down and simplifying. It's a place of true freedom. So the awakening of our soul and the revealing of ourself, it's actually a place of true freedom. And the most important part in the process of and the work towards awakening is self-honesty, how sincere we are with ourselves. I already mentioned it. Some people will have the conviction that they know themselves, when in reality they mistake the self for the ego. The accelerated process of inner growth which the human beings experiment can be understood easier from a certain perspective if we divide it in 9 phases. The process of transformation is unique and individual, and it brings to light especially those aspects that are important for each and every one of us. Sooner or later, all human beings will experiment this process of transformation, because this process takes place, as I already mentioned several times now, at the planetary scale. Therefore, the more aware and proactive we are, the easier and the more fulfilling our experience will be. So the 9 fundamental phases of transformation, when you find the logic which exists at the base of the progression of these phases, can help us enormously to understand our own life, but also the events in the midst of which we are. We can either resist the transformations, which is not good at all, or we can trust the fact that this transformation leads us towards a much, much better life. If we try to slow down, if we try to block this transformation to maintain our old level of comfort, the only thing that we do is to block ourselves from progressing, from evolving. The only thing we do is to reiterate our fears and to create an useless pressure and agitation. The other option, if we start from the premises that the process of transformation is governed by a superior force, and it is exactly what we need the most, if we allow this process to shape us, we will notice that the frequency of vibration of our being, of our emotions, and of our mind and consciousness will enhance, and we will enjoy the benefits of each phase of transformation that all of us go through, no matter what, no matter what. So let's browse through the 9 phases of the process of transformation and the specific states which will manifest both in our life, but also at the level of society. The first phases of this process refer to eliminating all the aspects that block or interfere with the self-expression of our soul and with the experiencing of love. These phases are relatively uncomfortable. Even if we accept the process, these phases will still be relatively uncomfortable. Because during them, they are brought to light all aspects which we were afraid of and which we have denied so far. Luckily, they will not last infinitely. So it's very good to know from the beginning, even if the phases we go through sometimes are not comfortable at all, they will not last infinitely. When we are approximately about the half of the process, it will come up like a turning point, in which light starts prevailing, in which we will experience a huge relief. And finally, the troubling symptoms which existed so far will simply disappear by themselves, and our consciousness will bloom, opening itself towards the energy of happiness. Essentially, every human being is destined to awaken, each in their own time and pace, and all in their own way, and sometimes even over lifetimes, as we play out a cosmic drama or comedy, better than tragedy. However, we are far away from experience any notion of a collective awakening in any near future. So embark on the path, watch out for the traps, don't be afraid of the dark, and most importantly, enjoy the ride. The only way out is through it, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, the tunnel is made out of light itself. So it's very good to know that as soon as the ego ceases to constantly play hide and seek with us, thus always masking both our soul and the supreme immortal self, only then it becomes possible to intuit who we really are as the ultimate divine essence of our being. So these aspects, I hope that you enjoy them and you understand what is going on from a certain point of view to a certain degree. And if you want to know about the 9 phases of transformation in detail, I've just created an online course. If you want to join it, you are very welcome. It lasts for 3 weeks. It is online, so you start it whenever you decide. The meetings are pre-recorded, so you do it in your own pace. And at the end of the course, you will have gone through the 9 phases of transformation together with a specific method for each phase, so that you can move through it as fast as possible with as little suffering as possible. So the address in this image, karlskrona.nata.se, is where you can find the online course if you would want to join it, so that you learn how to make this life-transforming transition from the ego to the soul. So if you have questions, and I see that there are questions, this is great. Just allow me a short moment to be able to take them in turns. So Madalena asks, how can we collectively move towards the fourth dimension when not everyone is accumulating spiritual energy by practicing on a spiritual path? One solution that I know for sure it works is that we do our best, that we really practice spiritually so much so that we accumulate enough spiritual energy. Maria, yes, you can ask in Romanian. So when we do our part in this process and we accumulate a lot of spiritual energy, we will reach what it is called the critical mass. So on this planet, there are approximately 7 billion people. There are, I think it's necessary, if I remember correctly the information that I got from our spiritual master, I believe that it is necessary around 500,000 of people who awaken to make this collective transition into the fourth dimension. So if you choose to be one of the 500,000 people who will awaken, it will be enough. So we just need to reach this critical mass, and that will help the entire population. There will be also people who will refuse completely to make the transition. They will have their place. So there is space and place for each of us. Another question is how to tune all again with nature when the situation is as it is globally. In some countries, they are very far away from that. I know. In order to tune again with nature, even if you are in a country with lockdown and you are staying indoors, still you can pay attention to the cycles of the nature. For example, pay attention, and it's very simple to do that now it is evening, so that the activities that you do at evening are of a certain nature, which require a little bit of regeneration, recharging your batteries, paying attention to your inner life. And during the day, when it's the daylight and you have another type of energy and enthusiasm and dynamism, you do other types of activities. So this is one way of tuning again with nature. But you can also tune with your inner nature. So you pay attention, for example, to your thoughts and emotions. So, and also keep in your consciousness the fact that our true nature is love and light, is happiness, is bliss, is compassion, kindness, generosity, all these divine attributes that we know of and that we can learn more about. So being in tune with your true nature means that you manifest almost all the time those aspects instead of fears, disappointment, frustration, and so on. So even if not everybody in some parts of the world are able to tune with the nature that we refer as the one outside, tune with your inner nature. It's actually even, it's leading to the awakening even sooner than that. Another question, how to discover the task for which we reincarnated? And now I will have two answers. For the ones who are in our spiritual school, meditations with the great cosmic power Matangi will reveal the meaning of your existence in this lifetime. For those of you who are not in our yoga school yet, then simply you will allow yourself some time in which you can do as a meditation. You sit, you relax, you withdraw your senses from the outer world. You focus within your spiritual heart for a few moments until you really feel that you are calm, and then you will simply ask the divine consciousness this question: which is the meaning of my existence? Could you please reveal to me the meanings of my existence? So either the meditation with the great cosmic power Matangi, or meditation in which you ask this question: which is the meaning of my existence? Which is the task that I chose for this existence? And you do it until you will get the answer. The answer will come, it's guaranteed. Another question: is the true love the one we experience through a fully awakened, a completely open Anahata chakra? It is the beginning of it. So when we awaken completely Anahata chakra, then we'll start experiencing what true love is. There are involved all the superior chakras in the experiencing of true love. But without the awakening of Anahata, it will be impossible to feel what true love is actually. Another question. I just had a revelation when you said about all being like cells of a bigger collective, how it would be like if different cells of our body would turn to war against each other. It's called cancer. Like different countries on our planet do, or if different organs in our body would declare war against each other. It's called cancer. So when we really understand that we are like, every one of us is like a cell in an organism, and again, the organism is not only on this planet, but we can resume it to this planet, then we will be very aware and very cautious what we think, what we feel, how we behave, how we treat each other. And we will do our best not to behave like a cancer cell. Another question: how to be proactive in the direction of these transformations, more specific. One answer is by practicing more of the spiritual path. The more we practice, the more proactive it means we are. So there are some more questions. I will take just a few seconds because it's written in another language than English, so I can translate it. Woman, Maria, says, I have experienced the first experience after the 4th of January to the 5th. In the morning, I wake up, and then when I was standing, I felt that I'm still getting awakened, and I was realizing that I am me, that I always have been me. I was very happy, and I was laughing that it is so simple. Yes, it is that simple. And since then, I've been going through all kinds of experiences. Another comment: hello, Georgiana, the webinar was so lovely, very inspiring, and encourages me to continue transforming and following the spiritual path. Thank you. I will need to head off now. Thank you to Hailey. So if there aren't more questions, I will be happy to answer to them to you. Usually when it is silence, I joke a little bit and I say it just means I explained everything very clearly, so no questions. Another comment: I want to ask if what I have lived and the terrible experience was a test. I honestly speaking don't know what to answer to that. So it's better that I don't just give you an answer for the sake of it. If the experience that you just described a little bit earlier, that you were very happy and that you were laughing and you felt that everything was simple, I don't see it as a test. I see it as a very beautiful experience. I don't see it as a confrontation with an aspect of yours. So I wouldn't, from my perspective, which is still limited and not completely liberated, I wouldn't say it was a test or a confrontation. It was just a glimpse of how it feels when you are awakened, when the soul is awakened, when you have contact with yourself, with your true self. A question is, will the recording be available? Yes, it will. It will be. I will need a little bit time to edit it, and I will post it on the YouTube channel of our Swedish yoga school, so you will have access to it soon. So a question was, is it possible to study the online course you mentioned in English? It is in English. The website is in Swedish, but the online course, because I hope that will be people from more countries than Sweden, the online course is in English. And another comment, thank you for the most enlightening webinar. This would be obligatory in every biology, chemistry, physical class for youth. Not obligatory, I don't particularly like the word, but it will be very good for example, teachers and parents to educate their children in this manner, to make them understand that we are souls having a physical experience, that we are unlimited, immortal, divine, and that we actually are literally like the cells in a big organism. So we should pay a little bit more attention how we function as a cell, so that we don't turn ourselves into a sickening cell for the rest of the organism. Madalena says, indeed a very enlightening webinar and also a lovely one. Thank you so much, Madalena. So in the few minutes we have left, in case you want to think of another question to ask, I will just make a very short presentation of the online course. So in the online course, which is in English, we will go through the 9 phases of transformation. And then you will understand exactly what is going on with you, why you feel how you feel. But most importantly, what you can do in order to make this transition as easy and as pain-free as possible for yourself. Each phase will be described with what happens when we resist it, what happens when we accept it, and there will be also a practical exercise, a method, which is specific for each phase of the process, so that you can make the transitions very harmonious and also very rapid. So at the end of this 3 weeks online course, you will have the map with the 9 phases that we all go through. So of course, when you know what is going on, and also when you know what to do exactly, it will be much easier to make the necessary transformations. There will be also weekly meeting live on Zoom, so that I can answer to your questions from the course. And we will also have a group a Facebook group where you can also support each other, ask questions, and I will answer to those questions. So this is how the online course will function. And I told you, when you sign up for the course, you pay, you will have access to the first bound of training videos. So you will play them and you watch them in whenever you have the time for them. So it is not a live meeting that you have to be at a certain moment, otherwise you miss the lesson. You will have access to them after you buy the online course for the rest of your life. So it's from that point of view, there is no stress, no rush. If there are no more questions, then please allow me to thank you for a wonderful evening that we spent together. I really hope that what I have presented for you will be of use for you. And I will be also very happy if we will meet also inside the online course. Otherwise, I plan to keep a free webinar once per month, which I will announce, and it will also be published on different social medias. I wish you a wonderful evening. I love you.